All right, everyone, what's up? We're gonna translate another section from this book. Um, I got it up on the screen in front of me. So here, there's just it's this android talking named Samsen, and this android pretty much is just having as you can see from the title of this mini section, it's just a couple paragraphs long. Flashback Himalayas. So she's probably, to my prediction, going to be thinking about that time. I got the first sentence here. ฉันลืมตาตื่นขึ้นในดึกคืนหนึ่ง I opened my eyes one night ขณะนอน charge battery รู้สึกว่ามีใครจ้องมอง So I opened my eyes while charging and instantly knew that someone was watching me. Joke. Okay, next paragraph. Um, เขาเป็นทหารระบาดเจ็บคนหนึ่ง He was a soldier injured. He was an injured soldier. He was an injured soldier. So he was right. เขาเป็นทหารระบาดเจ็บคนหนึ่ง. So he was an injured soldier. And then now we're gonna, I think, go into a flashback, right? ในปีที่หิมะในปีที่หิมะที่ฮิมาลัยละลายแล้ว That year, the snow in the Himalayas had melted too quickly. Ta Nam Kang Let Lai. The glaciers, the glaciers melted, and the climbers. So right, Let Lai, Let Nak Bin Cow. So that's climbers, and the mountaineers. Is that too like hooty of a word, hootsy tootsy of a word to use for this? And the mountaineers. So here's the thing, though. So okay, I got it. That the snow in the Himalayas melts. So this is one of those things in translating that I think, that when you're not a native speaker in the language, you come across which is seemingly contradictory pieces of information. For example, right? Um, เขาเป็นทหารระบาดเจ็บคนหนึ่ง. Okay, got it. ในปีที่หิมะที่ฮิมาลัยละลายแล้ว. So we know that the snow is melting quickly. Um, the glaciers melt และนักปีนเขามักไม้ทุกพายุหิมะถล่ม and hundreds, let's just change that to hundreds and hundreds of mountain climber and hundreds of mountain climbers. So there must be two things going on. There must be snow melting and it must be snowing. That's the only way I can make sense of that. So that year, hundreds of mountain climbers, the glaciers melted, and and hundreds of mountain climbers were caught in a violent and random, let's just say random. This will, I think, because if I was reading this in English, I'd be like, wait, but it's melting, but it's snowing, it wouldn't make sense. So in a violent and random storm. So that's how I'm going to solve that contradiction right there. I'm going to add something that wasn't there to make it there before. I know that's kind of editing. I know that's what I'm not supposed to do, but the author um has given me permission to change the things that I need to change. Luckily, he's really chill and understanding. And this is one of those things that for the English version, I don't know about the Thai to be a Thai native speaker. Maybe it's not seeming contradictory that snow can melt, himat lat and ta nam keng lat that glaciers can melt and snowing at the same time. To me, that seems odd. So that's why I'm going to add this phrase right here, violent and random storm. Okay, next sentence. Um, Tau Damabu. Here we go. So we have a name of a mountain. Talom. Talom is like violent. himatalom. Okay. Kau damaจากKathmandu Ruwa Madam Sentang. So Kao. So this is so here is one of those interesting parts about the Thai language, right? So we have Kao, which is the same way to write mountain. It's a quick way to write mountain. Um, it can also refer, it's also a pronoun. Here it's being used as a pronoun, Kao, gender neutral, but because of the context, this is so it's so contextual, right? Because of the context, we know that it's referring to the soldier. So it's going to be he, as in the soldier, had followed past perfect because we're talking about an event before the initial time. The initial time here is set in this moment, right? So remember, this is really important for me while translating, is remembering that moment that the scene is starting, especially for Thai, especially for languages that don't conjugate verb tenses, right? This is really important. Remembering the sort of initial event when something, and so then when a speaker is casting backward in their memory to the past, having that sort of foundation and knowing, okay, that Samson, the android is remembering this right now and we're still in the memory. We're talking about the soldier. He had followed me from. So this is a funny thing. I don't know why the author did this. He put the English version in parentheses next to the Thai version. Also a sidebar. I don't know if this is really interesting for you, but it's really interesting to look at like Indian words or Nepali word. Well, I guess Hindi um words or Nepali words that have their roots in Pali or Sanskrit because the names of the places are used with letters that in Thai are only used for Pali and Sanskrit, right? I think that's Dochada. I forget the name of that one, but right, these letters which are very specific, very kind of elegant letters. They're used for Pali Sanskrit words. They look cool. Kathmandu um is written with them because it has its roots because the name has its roots in uh, Thai. Thai language has its roots and similar roots to Nepali. That's what I'm trying to say. Anyways, we're back to the soldier. He had followed Dhamma. So here we don't have a we have our subject, we have our verb, we don't have our direct object. But he had followed me because Thai you can also cut out things like that. So he had followed me. I'm going to assume, and if it's not me, I'm going to go back and change it here. I'm just going to say that the soldier had followed me, as in Samsan, from Kathmandu. And so here I can see that I'm probably right. I'm not totally sure, but right. Rujak, Ruwa, Shandan, Ma, Dam, Sentang, ACT. So, okay, I don't know what ACT is. I don't know what ACT is. I'm thinking it's some kind of hiking trail. ACT. So, huh? He knew that I was following. So I can't really figure out what that acronym is. It must be some kind of trail in Nepal. Uh, ACT Trail, Nepal. And here we go. So the Thai didn't show up, and the acronym didn't work. But here, um, we can see that this is the Annapurna Circuit Trek in Nepal. So he'd followed me from Kathmandu. He had followed me from Kathmandu up to up to Annapurna. He must have been asking Annapurna. He must have tracked me, asked around, and the villagers, right? So here I was thinking about it this morning. Here I left out the part about the ACT trail and just said Annapurna. So maybe what I'm losing is the knowledge that Samsan is the android is doing like a hike in Annapurna, but because a lot of Western readers or people who um read English, they might be more familiar with Annapurna because it's a very popular sort of Western tourist destination. Has two N's, sorry. Um, I don't think I'm going to do the ACT trail. Sometimes I think about it like this, right? Like that with all the certain details in the original draft, um, which I don't know, I just picture like this, like some steps, something very detailed. I just kind of think that like maybe sometimes with translating into the target language, you can sort of make that second line that I drew there and just sort of like I think about it like that sometimes, like bypassing unnecessary like things that in the target language become unnecessary bulkiness, getting straight to the meat. She's in Annapurna. A soldier followed her up, asked around, right? So here we go. Khao Sup Tam Ma Rui, right? Khao Sup Tam Ma Rui. Right. So that's just this. Asked around. I took care of that sentence with two words because I'm sort of in it for concision. Uh, which I know it's that I know that like Nabalkov would probably roast me on the cross, but in my specific situation, right, I have a word count in mind from the publisher, and I have express permission from the author as well to change what I need to change, to edit what I need to edit. So here, I'm going to take the constraints of the word limit of the publisher and the permission of the author, the chillness of the author. I'm going to do what I need to do here. I'm going to break that. I'm going to boil that sentence down. Um, cow masup tam rue rue, right? I'm just gonna boil that down and I'm just gonna say he asked he must have tracked me, asked around in the villagers, right? Chao ban, rawang tang, ruwa, sao, sai, คนหนึ่ง ไปกับหน่วยผู้พาย. Okay, so here we go. Sao, I'm Sao Sai. I don't know what Sao Sai is. In the sentence. So I'm gonna look it up. I think it's suai, right? So sometimes when I come across things that I don't know in Thai that aren't exact terms, like it's not like this is a sort of dictionary word, Sao Sai. Because if you translate it, it literally means late girl, which doesn't make any sense, or some other meaning that I don't know. Um, so I'm just gonna pop it into. So here I type in Maitung, which means what does it mean? And here I'm also getting. So here I'm getting a bunch of things that aren't it. I actually think I found a typo I think I found a typo in the thing. It should be Sao Suai, but Suai meaning beautiful, but here I'm finding a typo. Uh, right. I could totally be wrong. What I'm gonna do on the original manuscript here is I'm gonna make a note about that, and I'll ask the author later. Here, I'm just gonna assume it's a typo because it doesn't make logical sense to me. I can't find any information to prove that I'm wrong. So, in the villagers along the way, along the way, all pointed him in the direction of the beautiful, of the gorgeous woman they had seen going up with the para medics, right? Sometimes I feel like articulation or like creativity uh is really fluid, and there's sometimes like certain blocks. Sometimes it can be really large blocks. Like in my novel, I'm sort of hitting this point like I don't really know how to get the denouement together. I don't have it right. It's a very big like structural block. But for here in this sentence, I feel like I had a smaller block with that word Sausai or with like the sort of information about Annapurna, and it's such a nice feeling when there is that blockage, and then suddenly you see your way past it, and you the whole sentence or the whole book just comes out. Here was the full sentence, right? So let's just go over the sentence again. He must have tracked me, asked around, and the villagers along the way all pointed him in the direction of the gorgeous woman they had seen going up with the paramedics. Okay, great. So now we are on to a new paragraph. Seen going up with the paramedics เขาเข้ามาจนถึงที่เกิดเหตุ he pushed on until the accident site. I never know. T good head, right? T good head is accident. So good head is like incident, accident. You can use it to say maybe it's like a negative event, right? T good head. And so he until he got to the accident site, until I don't know exactly what type of accident it is. So I think what I want to do is figure out more specifics and make that first word less ambiguous so that the reader in English knows exactly what good had exactly what accident the young soldier is walking his way to. ไม่รู้ว่าไปสมัครเป็นทหารตอนไหน I don't know. Let's just I should there's no subject for the sentence here again. Mairua. So I don't know who doesn't know. Mairu. Okay, Kai Mairua. Right, Kai Mairu. But that's okay because that's just how shit is. Um, but for the English, I'm going to assume that it's Samsen who's the subject of this sentence, that it's the android, that it's the first person speaker. So I'm just gonna put the subject there. I don't know how long he was a soldier for. Literally, it would translate to I don't know how long he registered to, I don't know when he registered to be a soldier. I don't know how long he was a soldier for. But here, this just makes more sense to me. I don't know when he registered to be a soldier. I don't know how long he was a soldier for. He never said. I still don't know who he never said that to. I think he's gonna say it to her, but I'm just gonna say he never said. I didn't care to know, and I didn't. He never said, and I didn't care to know. Yeah, that sounds nice. And I didn't care to know. แค่รู้สึกตกใจที่เห็นเขาโผล่มา Okay, until he got to the, I'm gonna call it landslide. Until he got to the landslide. Until he got to the landslide. He pushed on until the until he reached the landslide. So that's where they are. I'm gonna say it's a landslide. I'm gonna assume I'm thinking snow, mountains, mud, melting, landslide. They pushed on until he reached the landslide. I don't know how long he was a soldier for. He never said, and I didn't care to know. I felt only fear when he appeared. I felt only terror when he appeared there beside me. Here we go. So now we're getting into like some specifics of the soldier's outfit. When he appeared there beside me in his so we're talking about chut is uniform outfit. So here, lie is a sort of pattern. I don't know what lie prong is, so I'm just gonna look up what lie prong is. So I think that this is one thing about translating too, right? Of course, I could assume that camouflage, but I was confused when it said see some because I can't immediately think of any orange camouflage. Okay, so there we go, orange camouflage. So they must be in some sort of like mountain terrain where there's a lot of mud. It's not green when he appeared there. When I felt only terror when he appeared there beside me. He wore tan. He wore tan? He wore tan fatigues, right? Is that the word that soldiers? He wore tan camouflage fatigues. He wore tan camouflage fatigues, right? So here's another thing about translating, that I think is really interesting, is that like it pushes um my vocab both in Thai and mean and even in English to those really specific niche things that I didn't like niche areas that I don't really felt sure about before. Like I've never been a soldier, I've never spent any time in the military. I know that people call them fatigues from movies. So it was kind of in my head, but even still I needed to check. As for Thai, I'm kind of confused because I don't really know specific vocab for especially for being a soldier, right? I only know what I experienced. So I think translation is a really cool way to sort of acquire vocabulary outside of your direct experience. So here we go. He's wearing tan camouflage fatigues. Um, he wore tan camouflage fatigues, which stood out from the snow around us. So I'm just gonna glangi masikao, right? So of course the white snow, but I'm gonna say surrounding snow. I don't know what to go with that. Sorry. I'm just gonna say that and change it later. Sandok jai ti ruwa tua ain di jai. Out from the snow around us. I was the most I was most uh, that was most terror that was most terror. And I was terrified to know that I felt joy, and I was terrified to know that I felt joy.ฉันตกใจที่รู้ว่าตัวเองดีใจฉันดีใจที่เห็นที่เห็นเขา happy to see him. I was happy to see him. I was happy to see him. So here we go. We have the last couple sentences of this paragraph. I was happy to see him. So here we go. Calm. I'm still confused about calm here. That's one of those little words in Thai that I actually have a kind of trouble figuring out. Calm. Um, so happy to see him. So calm is like to find something funny. So I was happy to see him. and I found his outfit ridiculous. Found his- And I found his outfit ridiculous, right? Right? So I think I could be saying that you find something ridiculous, right? I found his outfit ridiculous. That camouflage, that orange camouflage wouldn't do too much in the snow. Food sign. Okay, great. So here we go. I was happy to see him and found his. I was happy to see him, and I found his outfit. Happy to see him. I want that to be a full stop. And I found his outfit ridiculous. That orange camouflage, after all, wouldn't do too much. After all, wouldn't do too much in the snow. Who designed it? เขาไม่ได้เข้ามาหาฉันโดยทันที He didn't come to me right away. He didn't come to me right away. งานของหน่วยผู้ไป I always have trouble saying that word. I think it's puli pie or poo pie, but I don't know why there's no Lee. Nui is like a unit, so Nui poo pie. ไม่ได้วางถึงขนาดทำให้เราได้คุยกัน He didn't come to me right away. He didn't come to me right away. So, okay, so here we go. There's something I did here also, which I don't know if it's okay for some people, but I think it's okay for this project, even though I'm going to contradict what I said about word count just a couple seconds ago. Right? Here we haveงานของหน่วยผู้พายไม่ได้วางถึงขนาดทำให้เราได้คุยกัน. Right? So, okay, I thought up until this whole moment that he had only snuck up to meet that the soldier had only come to meet her at the night, but now that past sentence is making you realize that he arrived there earlier in the day and had time to see her working with the other paramedics. So what I'm going to do here is just add some context to make it more clear to the reader in English that um, he had spent some time there around the area of the accident before he came and approached Samson later that night. So he didn't come to me right away. He stood back and watched us work. Who's us? Me and the other paramedics and I, sorry, the other paramedics and I didn't have much time to talk. Didn't have much time to talk during the day. Okay, so we have that. Now we know what's happening. I think my prediction is the next sentence is going to switch to the nighttime here. เขายังคงช่วยคนนั้นคนนี้ไปเรื่อย He also helped. He also chipped in, helped this or that, this or that person. ฉันก็ดูแลคนป่วย I cared for sick. And I was kind. Sometimes in Thai, here's another thing with Thai. Uh, Sometimes I don't really get the conjunctions. like in English, you say "ฉันก็ดูแลคนป่วย" right? I took care of the sick people, right? Okay. There's one independent clause. Then we're gonna have the second independent clause, "ฉันก็อุ่นใจ." So I was kind, I was warm-hearted, I was thoughtful or something, right? Obviously, like care. So here, if we use a conjunction in Thai, we're seeing "แต่" ฉันก็อุ่นใจ. But really, but in English, it doesn't make any sense because if you say I cared for the sick, but I was kind, that doesn't uh that doesn't make sense. So when I come to these sort of weird things with Thai conjunctions, like it happens like a lot. It's not just this book. It's a lot of the time that conjunction sets up a different expectation, um, for me. So of course, sorry, wrong word. I meant to type in unjai, right, which is warm-hearted, right? I'm pretty sure it's warm-hearted, kind, feel relieved, feel comfortable. I cared for the sick, and I was, see here, let me take that back. Here I realized after looking it up that I was actually kind of mistaken, and this is why you gotta look all that shit up, is because actually I cared for the sick. Um, I cared for the sick, and I was not anxious doing it. I cared for the sick, and I was not anxious doing it. So unjai we saw from the thing was from the definition was relieved, right? To feel relief. So and I was relieved doing it doesn't quite make sense. So I was not anxious doing it until the moment that he and I cared for the sick and I did not mind it. And I cared for the sick and I did not mind it. Not until he got injured. I cared for the sick. I didn't mind doing it. Not until he got injured. Not untilเขาบาดเจ็บเขาก็ได้เราก็ได้เจอกัน till he got sick. Until he got injured, we had known each other since he arrived to help. We had come to know each other. He had followed me here. He had followed me when I was on air. Just want to check on air. So she's gonna make some kind of point here. Um, he had followed me. So I think what's happening here, why this ending is going to be, I think, ambiguous but significant, is that we have the android trying to piece together um, different experiences that happened to her before the erasure of her memory. So I think that at the end of this section, once I translate it, it's going to seem a little bit ambiguous, but I think what it's doing is it's kind of signaling, okay, um, okay, this person, this soldier she must have known in her past life that was erased from her. He had followed me. He had followed me here. He had followed me here. During that time, I was hmm, dur- he had followed me here. And during that time, I had gotten I had felt as fatigued. I had felt as I had felt as fatigued, exhausted, low on energy. I had felt as weak as humans, as weak and hopeless as humans. Felt as hopeless and weak I felt hopeless and weak, hopeless and weak, like a real human. And I had seen him enough. I had seen him enough to know. Yes, I had almost forgotten who he was. Had almost forgot. I almost forgot who he was. I had almost forgotten who he was. My memory was wiped. But when I saw him, but when I saw him after the injury, but when I saw him after the injury, but after the injury, when I saw him, my tears began to flow. So, okay. Anything else to say about that? Uh, yeah, so pretty much right. He had followed me, Karamha siya, na doon siya on egg, like hiyang manut. So at the time when I was as tired as a human, I felt hopeless and weak, like a real human. I felt during that time I felt hopeless. I don't really like this sentence. I'm gonna change it later. Sing sangam lang mong ha how po di, and I had seen him enough to know. Yes, I'd almost forgotten who he was. My memory was wiped, but after the injury, when I saw him, my tears began to flow. De mưa hin kawi kang shan ko lang nam ta. So I began to cry. My tears began to flow. What's better? So here, I'll read the whole thing, and then I'll let you go. Okay, for Samsen, flashback Himalayas. I opened my eyes one night while charging and instantly knew that someone was watching me. He was an injured soldier. That year, the snows in the Himalayas had melted too quickly. The gray snow in the Himalayas had melted too quickly. The great glaciers melted, and the hundreds of mountain climbers were caught in a violent and random storm. The soldier had followed me up from Kathmandu up to from following me up to Annapurna. He must have tracked me, asked around, and the villagers along the way all pointed him in the direction of the gorgeous woman who they had seen going up with the paramedics. Um, the soldier pushed on until he reached the landslide. I don't know how long he was a soldier for. He never said, and I didn't. I don't know how long he was a soldier for. I didn't ask. I felt only terror when he appeared there beside me. He wore a tan camouflage fatigues which stood out from the snow around us. I was terrified to know that I felt joy. I was, and I was terrified to know that I felt joy. I'm going to change that later. I was happy to see him, and I found his outfit ridiculous. That orange camouflage, after all, wouldn't do too much in the snow. Who designed it? He hadn't come to me right away. He stood back and watched us work. The other paramedics and I didn't have much time during the talk during the day. He also chipped in and helped with this or that and helped this or that person. I cared for the sick, and I did not mind it. Not until he got injured. Not until he got hurt. Since he arrived to help, we had come to know each other. He had followed me here, and during the time I had felt hopeless and weak like a real human, and I had seen him enough to know, yes, I had almost forgotten who he was. My memory was wiped, but after the injury when I saw him, after the injury when I saw him, my tears began to flow.